Hello, if you want to watch exclusive lemon content on What If Naruto, then go to my Boosty. The first link in the description here contains such hot stories for adults, such as What If Naruto was a daddy for Sarada, or Kushina and Mikoto vulgar Naruto mommies. Follow the link and enjoy. I'm waiting for you.
After all, today was the start of a new life for her, so to speak. I can't believe it worked. I thought I'd die for sure, but here I am, alive and well. The woman was none other than Tsunade the Slug Tamer, medic extraordinaire, and one of the legendary three ninja. Yesterday I was a 50-year-old woman, not that I would ever admit that. Today, I'm not sure what I am. Thinking back, Tsunade remembered how she came to be here, 10 years into her past. I never thought it was possible, but to think something like time travel could be done. My former teammate was a sick twisted man, and I hope his soul rots in hell for all eternity. Orochimaru, in one of his bids for immortality, devised a technique to imprint his soul on his younger self, giving him unlimited chances at life, and plenty of time to complete his ambition of learning every ninja technique. Although the technique was incomplete, Tsunade found a record of it, and after a great deal of effort, completed it. Unfortunately, it would only work once. Having been the fifth Hokage, Tsunade was deemed the one best suited for using the technique, as she would be in the best position to use all her power and knowledge to change the future. I guess I should get started then. There's no time like the present. Smirking at her inside joke, Tsunade set out on her self-appointed mission of changing the world. Master Tsunade, I don't think this is a good idea. A familiar sight was held for the patrons of the casino. Tsunade was once again gambling away all her money, while her apprentice tried to stop her from doing so. This is all the money we have left. Tsunade was tempted to ignore her apprentice's warnings. Seeing Shizune alive again was uncomfortable for her, but she was happy to see her first apprentice, unlike how she would feel if she saw her second apprentice again. I'll make sure that girl never learns how to properly throw a kunai this time around for what she did. Pushing those thoughts aside for the time being, Tsunade addressed her truly loyal apprentice. It'll be fine. I have a good feeling today. I can't lose. Tsunade reassured Shizune. Walking up to a roulette table, Tsunade pulled out her briefcase and took out all her money. I want to buy enough chips to play the max bet on deuce loaded. Put the rest on black. Shizune paled and looked at Tsunade in horror. You're betting everything we have on a 38-to-1 shot. Tsunade smiled and returned Shizune's look. I know my luck, Shizune. The odds are better than you think. Remembering her master only wins when something bad is about to happen, Shizune mentally prepared herself. Relax. What's the worst that could happen? After placing her bets, the dealer spun the ball. Around the wheel it spun, eventually coming to a halt. 2 black. The dealer declared in shock. Cash out. Tsunade immediately responded. The end is nigh. Armageddon is approaching. The 4 horsemen ride out. Doomsday is upon us. Ragnarok has come. It's the end of days. Shizune thought to herself. Tsunade calmly took her chips and exchanged them for cash, a panic-stricken Shizune following her all the while. All right. Do you understand the plan? Repeat it to me so I can be sure you do. Tsunade and Shizune were currently outside the city's limits, on the road back to the Hidden Leaf Village. Tsunade was still calm, but Shizune, well, if it was not for the duo's extensive medical knowledge, she may have had a stress-induced heart attack. Yes, ma'am. We are returning to the Hidden Leaf Village, where I will request an A-rank mission. I require a team of Jonin to act as my bodyguards while traveling Fire Country, paying off your gambling debts. I will also be provided with several scrolls containing with your shadow clones sealed inside, in case anyone you owe debts to requires you to pay them off personally. They had won enough money to pay off Tsunade's debts in Fire Country, or enough to keep her creditors off her back. Securing her safety in her home country was enough for Tsunade, for now. Okay then, you understand perfectly. Tsunade said. Calming down slightly, Shizune managed a weak smile. Alright, let's move out. I want to be in the Hidden Leaf Village by tomorrow morning. There's no time to waste. Tsunade said again. Shizune then sighed, picked up Tauntaun, and ran after her master. It was the next morning, and Tsunade, Shizune, and Tauntaun had arrived in the Hidden Leaf Village. Approaching the gates, Tsunade noted the relaxed condition of the guards. It's been quite some time since I've seen anyone that peaceful while on duty. Walking up to the guards, Tsunade cleared her throat. Ahem. The Chunin guard looked up, and unfortunately for him, right into Tsunade's cleavage. He then quickly raised his eyes to meet Tsunade's but could not stifle his furious blush. She did not mind it at all. If I didn't want anything like that to happen, I wouldn't dress like this. Clearing his throat, the Chunin guard greeted Tsunade. Welcome to the Hidden Leaf Village, ma'am. What is your identity and purpose of your visit? He asked with a stutter. I'm Senju Tsunade. I'm here with my apprentice, Shizune, and our pet pig, Tauntaun, to see the Hokage. Recognizing Tsunade's name, the guard embarrassingly wrote down their names on the entry sheet. Have a nice day, he said, still quite shaken. Tsunade then strolled into the village. Shizune, carrying Tauntaun, followed behind. As the trio walked to the Hokage Tower, Tsunade began reminiscing. It's so strange seeing the village intact, and my face not on the mountain. It'll be back up there soon enough though. In the future, the village was destroyed by the Akatsuki, a crater left in its place. That's just another thing I'll have to make sure does not come to pass. While thinking of her future, they continued on their way. Several adults stopped and greeted Tsunade respectfully, but she politely turned them away, saying she had important business with the Hokage. She could have easily snuck into Sarutobi's office, but this way, everyone in the village would know she was back right away, and her old sensei would have time to prepare for her. After all, it would be bad if he had a heart attack from the shock of seeing her back in the village. Soon they had made it to their destination, and stood outside the doors of the Hokage's office. Knowing she was expected, and that Sarutobi would have sent away any appointments, she walked right in. Sitting at his desk, smoking his pipe, Sarutobi appeared calm. Inside though, his mind was racing. One of his students, who had sworn never to return, was back in the village. Even stranger, she seemed to be in a very good mood. Sarutobi, while hoping for the best, was a shinobi, and prepared for the worst. Either she's finally over her fear of blood and the loss of her younger brother and fiancé, and here to return to active duty and help the village, or she's a very skilled imposter here to kill me and take over the village. Sarutobi was actually right on most counts, or all if things got desperate. Sensing his student's approach, he put out his pipe. Tsunade never approved of the habit, but after living so long, Sarutobi felt he earned the right to indulge in a vice. The doors to his office then opened, revealing Tsunade and her apprentice, who was carrying a pig. Letting out a deep breath, Sarutobi greeted them. Welcome home, Tsunade. It's good to see you again. It's good to be back home. Tsunade responded with a smile. Seeing the genuine look of contentedness on Tsunade's face, Sarutobi relaxed. It's definitely her now, I'm sure of it. She seems so serene as well. I see the pains she felt are gone now. I don't know how, but I'm glad for it. So, what brings you back home after all this time? Have you decided to accept my offer of being my successor? Sarutobi jokingly asked. Knowing Tsunade was in a good mood, he felt it was safe to make a joke like that. Tsunade, still smiling, did something Sarutobi was not expecting her to do. Actually, I have. Tsunade accepted his offer. Sarutobi began to hyperventilate, either from shock that she actually did, or joy that he can finally retire. Oh, by the way, I'd like to adopt Minato and Kushina's son. Tsunade added. Sarutobi then passed out. Shizune immediately put down Taunton and ran to the old man to make sure he did not have a heart attack. Tsunade kept smiling, knowing things were going to get better. Inside a classroom at the Hidden Leaf Village's Shinobi Academy, Uzumaki Naruto sat in class, alone. The school day was over, but he did not feel like returning to his empty home. Today was the graduation exam at the academy. Although Naruto was only 11, he felt like taking it, even though he would have been placed with students a year older than him, and not his own classmates. Although he was depressed, his homeroom teacher, Yumino Iruka, comforted him, saying he now had an extra year to improve, and when he graduated, he would be with peers his own age, who he had spent years with. Naruto was not so optimistic. Although he had been friends with Inuzuka Kiba, Akamichi Choji, and Nara Shikamaru at first, as the years went by, they grew apart. Nowadays, Naruto's only interaction was with his crush, Haruno Sakura, and his self-proclaimed rival, Uchiha Sasuke. The less said about them, the better. Earlier, Naruto had tried sulking and acting depressed so Iruka would buy him some ramen to cheer him up. The teacher had seen right though it, and told Naruto if had paid more attention in class and studied, instead of sleeping though class, or skipping it to play pranks, he might have passed. Iruka did not even pay attention to Naruto's refusal, having heard it too many times to count. Deciding he was a lost cause, Iruka left Naruto and went to help someone who was willing to listen to him. Sitting quietly, planning a prank to get back at Iruka, Naruto did not even notice when someone approached him. Uzumaki Naruto, the stranger announced. Jumping up in surprise, Naruto realized it was a Chunin messenger of the Hokage who startled him. The Hokage wishes to see you in his office post haste. It wasn't me, Naruto said, immediately defending himself. The messenger let out a sigh. Just go see the Hokage right now. Still upset as he thought he was being blamed for something that was not his fault, Naruto begrudgingly went to see Sarutobi. Outside the Hokage tower, Shizune stood with a team of Jonin. Alright then, do you understand your mission? Tsunade asked them. Yes ma'am. They responded as one. Good. Wait by the south gate. Shizune will meet you there shortly. The Jonin then left for the gate, leaving Shizune alone with Tsunade. Taunton sat by Tsunade's side. Before you go, there's one thing I want you to do. Tsunade then bit into her thumb and swiped it across her hand, surprising Shizune. I didn't know she was over her hemophobia. Tsunade made the boar, dog, bird, monkey and ram hand seals, and called out a technique. Summoning technique. In a poof, a slug appeared, holding a large scroll. Shizune gasped, and stared at it in shock. It's time you signed the slug summoning contract. You've more than earned it. Shizune, grateful for such an honor, happily signed the contract. They then said their goodbyes, and Tsunade reminded Shizune she can now use the slugs to keep in touch. Having finished doing something she regretted never having done in her previous future, Tsunade returned to Sarutobi's office to correct another wrong. Storming into the Hokage tower, Naruto had still not calmed down. I didn't even do anything this time. Why am I always the one who takes the blame? The idea that he could be called for something good never even occurred to Naruto. Such was his life to this point. Ungracefully throwing open the doors, Naruto addressed Sarutobi Hiruzen, the god of shinobi, third Hokage and strongest ninja in the Hidden Leaf Village with as much respect as he usually did. Hey old man, what's the big idea? I swear, it wasn't my fault. Inwardly saddened that Naruto assumed he had been called before him to receive some form of punishment, Sarutobi once again questioned whether he had done the right things with Naruto. No, the answer to that is I definitely have not. At least from now on, things will be better for him. Relax, Naruto, you are not in any trouble, unless there is a reason for you to be in one. Is there? Naruto, reassured he was safe, for the moment, cheered up, and let out a sigh of relief. Nope, none at all. So, what did you call me for? Sarutobi gestured to Tsunade, who was sitting in a chair in front of his desk, observing Naruto, who had not even noticed her. This is Senju Tsunade, one of my former students. Naruto looked in her direction. She's here to adopt you. Naruto just sat there with a dumb expression on his face, staring at the most powerful man in the village, the man known as the god of shinobi, and the professor, Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage. Having been called into the Hokage's office many different times, most of those times having to do with one of his infamous pranks and the trouble they caused, and he expected this time to be no different, except for one questionable thing. Naruto hadn't pulled any pranks yet today. He wasn't even planning to begin his usual troublemaking until after he had finally gotten home from the academy. Even with how curious Naruto was for the reason he was in the office of the Hokage, he would have never expected to have heard what the powerful old shinobi in front of him had said, and his slow brain could not quite process the words correctly. What? Hiruzen's sweat dropped and thought to himself. How can he be so dense? Then, when he realized that Naruto wasn't as smart as he should have been because his teachers only saw the beast that he was cursed to carry. This was still unknown to Naruto though, but because of he was hated in the village and wouldn't do well in school because he would waste his time coming up with new pranks to make people notice him. At this thought, Hiruzen felt a wave of sadness pass over him. Someone would have to be blind to not see the looks of complete hate and hostility they would give Naruto, or to see the way the villagers would whisper and gossip about him almost any time that he was in their presence. These thoughts continued to move Hiruzen into a slightly depressed state at the thought. He would have progressed further into those depressing thoughts if Naruto hadn't chosen then to speak up. Ojiazan, what was that you said? The adolescent voice broke Hiruzen from his continually saddening thoughts, and he was brought back to the current situation. Looking upon the almost exact carbon copy of his deceased successor, Hiruzen sighed before he began to explain again. After he clarified the situation of how Tsunade was there to adopt him, this time Naruto showed he heard and understood what that meant, visible by his shocked expression and the constant change of his line of sight from looking at his surrogate grandfather to his potential foster mother. After a span that for Naruto seemed like an eternity, this being because of the speed of his thoughts, he finally spoke. Nice to meet you, Tsunade. Naruto extended his arm in a friendly manner with a nervous smile on his face, somewhat afraid of this woman in front of him. Anime and manga, at least, he was afraid. That was until the completely blank and indifferent expression on her face changed, to where she now wore a gentle smile. To Naruto, the smile along with her eyes were filled with so many emotions, all mixing together so much that Naruto could only tell a few of them, and these few surprised him. In both her eyes and the smile he could tell that she held absolute love, endearment, compassion, and adoration, all of these being emotions that Naruto had only received from the third, and even then it was never to this extent. It's my pleasure, Naruto. She reached out and shook his hand, greatly resisting the urge to pull in the younger version of the great hero she knew from her time into a massive, bone-crushing hug, because she knew it would raise suspicion from both the boy and her old sensei if she did. Finally getting over his shock at the emotions in Tsunade's smile, Naruto chose now to pose a question he had. Mrs. Tsunade, I was wondering something. She smiled somewhat sadly at the formality Naruto used, because secretly she slightly hoped he would call her Ba-chan right off the bat just like he did in her time. Still smiling, she let go of Naruto's hand. Tsunade's fine Naruto, and I know what you're thinking. No, I'm not joking about any of this, and no, this isn't a prank. I'm completely serious about adopting you, and I truly hope that we can become close Naruto. Why would you want to adopt me Tsunade? The blonde host asked, still confused about the entire situation. Well, I want to adopt you because your parents and I were very close, and I owe it to them to do this. Hiruzen tensed up, beginning to realize where his old student was headed with the conversation. Tsunade, he deserves to know Sarutobi-sensei, and now that I am possibly adopting him, I'm going to tell him what I believe he needs to know. Anything else I will either let you say after or when you feel he is ready, Tsunade said, cutting off the old man. After taking a deep breath and letting out a large sigh, Hiruzen nodded to Tsunade, so she turned back to the younger blonde and continued what she was saying to him. Naruto, I personally knew your parents, and if you would like to know, I could tell you who they are. To say Naruto was shocked was an understatement. Not only did this woman before him know his parents, but she was ready to tell him who they were. Much to his dismay though, he also learned that despite responding to the many different times that Naruto asked by saying that he didn't know, the third Hokage did know who his parents were. Why you'll tell me, who my parents are? Tsunade noticed tears beginning to form at the corners of Naruto's eyes, and it was there that she realized that she absolutely needed to do this. Yes, Naruto, but first, I want you to know that no matter what you may have been told, your parents loved you with all their hearts, and were willing to give up their lives for you, and they did. The only reason that you were never told about them by anyone who knew the truth was because they were so powerful that the enemies they made would jump at the chance to find and destroy what they left behind, so you needed to be protected. Once I tell you who they are, you must promise to not breath a word about it to anyone unless you get approval from either me or the Hokage, understood? Getting a nod, she let out a deep breath, ready to tell him the truth. Well, I'll start with your mother. Naruto, your mother is Kushina Uzumaki, who was the last member of the Uzumaki clan from the village hidden in the whirling tides after they were attacked and destroyed. She was an incredibly strong and smart woman, and she's where you got your incredible chakra reserves and stamina. She loved you with all her heart, and she cared about you more than anyone else in her life, even herself. Not wanting to hear the boy ask a million questions yet, she continued without giving him a chance to. Now for your father. Naruto, your father, was the Hidden Leaf Village's Yellow Flash and the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze. Naruto just stood there. The blank expression from earlier was again plastered on his whiskered face, the only visible difference being that after a few moments, the tears that had formed in the corners of Naruto's eyes earlier were now slowly fall down his cheek. Seeing this, Tsunade quickly and instinctively knelt down on one knee, at about eye level with the boy, and pulled him into a massive hug, filled with compassion and with an emotion Naruto had never felt before, but feeling it now, he could only presume it was the love one might hold for another person, but not romantic sort of love, but more of a motherly love. Sinking into the hug somewhat, the young boy relaxed himself, and shocking himself slightly, he wrapped his arms as far as he could around Tsunade's back, holding on tightly to the cloak she wore. He didn't know what gave him his trust in the Slug Princess, but what he did know is that Tsunade truly did care about him, and she would protect him with her life if she needed to. He cried and sobbed into her shoulder while she rubbed his back and spoke in a soothing manner to him, and eventually she calmed the boy down to the point where while he was still crying, it wasn't as intense or loud as it previously had been, and much to both Tsunade's and Sarutobi's relief, his ragged, gasping breaths had settled down and become more even. The Sanin let go of the boy and let him stand up straight, but she kept her hands on his arms in an endearing sort of way. Looking into his eyes, she could see the slight look of sadness from the fact that he never go to know or love his parents, but what made her happy was else she saw. In his eyes, she saw the look of happiness of knowing that his parents loved him enough to the point where they were willing to give up their lives in order for him to be safe and protected, and the pride he now held since he knew how powerful, well-known, and respected his parents truly were. Glad to see this, Tsunade posed the question that had started all of this in the first place. Naruto, while it is completely your choice, now that you know who your parents were and how they made many powerful and dangerous enemies, I think that it would be for the best if you were to come and live with me, because even if you don't want to be adopted, you now need to be trained on how to better protect yourself, and I think that I could do that best, while also offering up a way to protect you until then. So, do you want to come with me, Naruto? Anime and manga. Inside his head, Naruto just went over everything that had just transpired since he had gotten here. He was beginning to like the idea of going with Tsunade for two main reasons. First, the idea of being trained and becoming more powerful alone made his blood pump a little faster, even more so in this case, considering that the person who wanted to train him had been a student of the third Hokage, and since he was by far the strongest ninja in the entire village, then that had to say something about how powerful Tsunade was. The second reason was that the woman in front of him cared enough about him to want to adopt him, yet she wouldn't force him into it. Along with that fact, he still couldn't get over the feeling of motherly love that Naruto had noticed coming from her embrace. Finally coming to a decision, he gently took Tsunade's hand in his and spoke up. I would be extremely grateful if you trained me, and I think that I would also be happy if you adopted me. Tsunade-ka-san. Smiling at the end of his sentence, Naruto brought Tsunade into another hug, wrapping his arms around her and nuzzling his face into her stomach. Almost brought to tears by the suffix that had been added to the end of her name, without thinking about her actions, Tsunade knelt down and squeezed Naruto extremely tight. It wasn't until she heard what sounded like choking till she realized that the boy was beginning to turn somewhat blue. Ah, Naruto, I'm so sorry. She immediately released the boy from her grasp, only for him to let out a few gasps before starting to lightly laugh. Confused why Naruto was laughing, she was about to ask him about it when he spoke up. I can tell you're a little confused by the look on your face. Well, I'm laughing because even though you were suffocating me, I could still feel the same emotion from earlier, the same wave of motherly love, and I can already tell that I love the feeling it gives me. The boy finished this answer with one of his trademark foxy smiles, with Tsunade again almost brought to tears, when suddenly, an idea struck her. Naruto, would you come here? Slightly confused, he complied and walked over to the point where he was right in front of the older blonde while she kneeled down on one knee, taking off a necklace that he had failed to take notice of earlier. Naruto, this necklace is a family heirloom that originally belonged to the first Hokage, who was my grandfather. Now I believe that it is my turn to pass it on to someone new. Now having completely removed the necklace and dangling it in front of Naruto, she began to place it around his neck when Hiruzen stood up seeming alarmed and almost half shouting out. Tsunade, stop. You of all people know what's happened to the last two people who have worn that necklace. So why would you want to give it to Naruto? This made all three ninja in the room freeze, all for different reasons. Naruto stopped because he was now curious what happened to the last two people who wore it, though it didn't sound good based on the third's tone. The third had stopped because he had forgotten that Naruto was with them for a moment, and had he realized, he would have simply stopped Tsunade from giving the boy the necklace and then would have spoken to her in private. Now Tsunade's reason was a lot more personal. Hiruzen could have almost said that Tsunade had literally frozen where she was because of the cold feeling that had now filled the room. Tsunade had frozen where she was because of the memory of pain that the old man had just renewed. The memory of her little brother who lost his life in the Second Shinobi World War the day after his 12th birthday, and of her deceased fiancé Dan Kato whom she failed to save on the battlefield also during the Second Shinobi World War, who was also the uncle of her current apprentice Shizune. Standing up, Tsunade shot the old man a somewhat cold stare, warning him to not bring that back up. I know what happened in the past, but that is the past. I am entrusting this to Naruto, because when I look at him, I see the dreams of the two previous owners being lived out through this boy. Kneeling back down, the look in Tsunade's eyes immediately soften when she looks back at Naruto. Naruto, I am entrusting you with more than just a necklace right now. I am entrusting you with both the dreams of my deceased little brother and fiancé. Their dream was to become the Hokage to protect the village and those in it. Knowing this, will you still accept it? Tsunade asked with a soft smile and small tears forming. Smiling back at her, Naruto said, "Of course I will, Ka-san. If you want to entrust it to me, then I will do everything in my ability to fulfill whatever it is. Believe it." Now smiling even larger, Tsunade placed the necklace over his head and around his neck, and then to complete the action, she grabbed Naruto gently by his chin, and then she lowered his head a little and kissed him lightly on the forehead, the action causing Naruto to blush for an unknown reason to him. Releasing him and leaning back now, it was Tsunade's turn to speak. Naruto, now that you accept me as your foster mother and new sensei, I only have one more thing to say to you. Before finishing her sentence, she wrapped Naruto in one more massive yet gentle hug, brushing one hand through his hair with the other rubbing his back. Naruto, welcome home. Wow. Naruto just stared at the huge, no, massive building before him, in pure shock at the incredible size of it. You see, while all of the different clan compounds throughout the village may have been big, the compound before him was so big that it expanded beyond the border of the Hidden Leaf Village and into the forest beyond. Smiling at the younger blonde's reaction, she couldn't help but giggle a little. Still smiling, she remembered how shocked Naruto was earlier before they had even gotten to the compound. Flashback no jutsu. It had been about an hour since they had left the Sarutobi's office, and now they were walking out of a small ramen stand near the edge of the village with Naruto patting his now full stomach, leaving behind a pile of about 8 bowls of ramen. Thanks for the food, old man. Tsunade only chuckled as she paid off the debt the boy had acquired over the years. Leaving the old man who ran the stand with a look of surprise, Tsunade quickly followed behind Naruto. Falling in stride with her fellow blonde, she noticed he had paused. What's wrong, Naruto? Turning his head to look at her, he answered her question. Where are we going? Laughing at the young boy, she started walking towards the southern edge of the village. Let's head in this direction. I have another surprise for you, she said, meriting a questioning look from the boy. Another surprise? I wonder what it could be. Naruto thought to himself while following Tsunade. End flashback no jutsu. So Ka-san, what is this place anyways? It looks bigger than the Hokage mansion. Naruto asked turning towards his new foster mother. This is the Senju compound, and it's your new home. So welcome home, Naruto. Tsunade couldn't help but smile a little after saying that. Taking a look at Naruto, she smirked when she saw that his jaw was now resting on the floor and his eyes were as white as dinner plates. Placing a hand on his back, Tsunade led the younger blonde to the front gate, which was covered in a large amount of blood seals to keep out intruders. Tsunade stood in front of it, then bit her thumb and swiped the bloody finger across the seal, and in a few seconds, it faded away and the gate opened. Naruto couldn't help but stare at the beautiful area right inside the gate. When you walked inside the compound, the very first sight that greeted you was a luscious garden with all sorts of flowers. Naruto had walked through the village and passed by the Yamanaka flower shop plenty of times and seen the large amounts of flowers and bouquets they had, but the flowers at the shop were nothing when compared to the beautiful flowers that were clearly abundant throughout the entire garden. The next thing Naruto noticed was that the flowers, in fact, the entire garden all rounded around one thing. Anime and manga. The centerpiece of the garden was a massive oak tree, so large that it was actually somewhat difficult for Naruto to actually see the top of it. This tree had been made by none other than the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju. He had made it when the village was first formed, and the fact that it was still standing, and even still growing, just helps to prove the point that the first was trying to make. When he made it, he envisioned the tree as a representation of the Leaf Village, and just like the oak tree, it would continue to stand strong, even after facing against both the elements and the test of time, and with time, it would also continue to grow. Wow! This place is beautiful, Naruto said quietly. Still smiling, Tsunade walked up behind Naruto and put her hands on her hips. Man, it's been so long since I've been here. While I'm not as surprised by the tree, I can't believe that the flowers haven't withered away by now. Must have had something to do with grandfather's special tree. Walking up to it, Tsunade gently placed a hand on the trunk of the tree, smiling sadly, remembering all the fun times she used to have with her grandfather and her brother around this tree. When she attempted to raise her free hand to wipe away a tear that had slid down her cheek, she realized that there was someone holding onto it. Looking down, she saw Naruto holding her hand in both of his, looking up at her with a worried expression on his face. Ka-san, are you okay? Tsunade couldn't help but smile at the concern the boy was showing for her. Yes, I'm okay, Naruto. Thank you. Now, how about we go find out which room you want? Finally wiping away the tear with her other hand, Tsunade led Naruto through the main doorway where they passed through what seemed like a massive ballroom. After that, they soon climbed some stairs and came upon a hall lined with doors. Each door led to a room, and most rooms contained a single queen-size bed, a large dresser, big enough to hold the clothes of 2 adults, and a closet for nicer clothes to be hanged when not being used. Connected to each room was a personal bathroom. Each bathroom had 2 sinks, a toilet, a shower, and a small soaking tub. Needless to say, Naruto was awestruck. He figured that most clans lived better than most people, but he never imagined something to this extent. There are so many rooms. And they're all so incredible. Which one is gonna be mine, Ka-san? Naruto asked, and he finally stopped staring in awe at the rooms to notice that Tsunade had gotten a little farther ahead of him. Once Naruto had caught back up with Tsunade, he repeated his question. Ka-san, which room is gonna be mine? Smiling at Naruto, she answered him. Naruto, I already told you. She kneeled down and ruffled his hair a little. You can have any room you want. Tsunade thought for a second. Well, you can have any room other than the master bedroom. I'm gonna have to claim that for myself, Naruto. I can have any room I want. Tsunade nodded at this, and the boy took a thinking pose. Ka-san, can I have the room right next door to yours? Tsunade smiled at the boy's choice. Sure thing, Naruto. We can go check it out later. For now, you and I should go ask Sarutobi-sensei to send some people to help you move out of your apartment. Tsunade then placed one arm beneath the other and lifted the other to her chin and thought for a few moments. After that, I think we should go to the library so I can get you some basic books on chakra to start your training. How does that sound? Tsunade looked at the boy with a smile, until she saw the slightly disappointed look on his face. Naruto, what's wrong? Naruto looked her in the eye and answered. Ka-san, thank you for wanting to take me to the library, but I think you'll have to go in by yourself. The librarian there won't let me check out books, or even step foot in the library anymore. Hearing this, Tsunade's blood began to boil. She knew exactly why the librarian did this, and she couldn't be angrier. She realized that she had slipped up and let a small amount of ki out when she noticed Naruto on the floor, sweating buckets and having slight trouble breathing. Kneeling down next to him, she rubbed his back slowly and helped him regain his breath. I'm sorry, Naruto, I didn't mean to do that. She was cut off when she saw Naruto smiling and laughing softly. What's so funny, Naruto? Tsunade asked curiously. You're apologizing for no reason. You didn't do anything wrong. And even if you did, it's not like I could be mad at you, Ka-san. Just like I can't be mad at any member of the village. After all, what kind of Hokage wouldn't be able to forgive someone for a simple misunderstanding? After saying this, Naruto put on one of the most caring smiles she had ever seen. Naruto both shocked and amazed her. She was shocked at just how mature this boy seemed to act for his age. He amazed her because he was willing to forgive everyone in the village who had shunned him, called him names, and even beaten him. While this may still be Naruto in front of her, something had definitely changed from her timeline. Whatever it was, the older blonde knew this change was going to be for the better. The thing is, while Naruto may have been able to forgive all the villagers for their actions, Tsunade wasn't. Which is why she had a hard time not destroying something when she and Naruto were walking through the village towards the Hokage mansion, and all the people would look at her with bright smiles, but then turn their heads and see the demon brat, as they called him, and begin to scowl and gossip, saying things like, why is it still allowed to walk around the village? Or, I wish the Hokage would hurry up and lock up that demon, or, I just don't feel safe with that thing out on the streets. The thing that ticked her off most though was when some random civilian tapped her on the shoulder and whispered into her ear. Lady Tsunade, you may not know this, but you're walking next to the nine-tailed fox that attacked the village a few years ago. Now that you know, none of the villagers or ninja present would object if you were to take revenge against that damn demon brat for what it did to the village. No longer able to contain her rage, Tsunade turned towards the civilian with a look of utter fury and released some ki, this time directed away from Naruto and at all the people on the street. Seeing the look of confusion on the civilian's face at her reaction, she grabbed him by the collar and raised him off the ground. Anime and manga, how dare you speak about my son like that? Are you people too blind or too stupid to see the difference between a kunai and the scroll it's sealed in? I should kill you right now for how you've treated him. In fact, I have every right to kill every single one of you. Tsunade now began yelling to everyone in the street, leaving everyone who hadn't passed out from her ki with looks of utter shock, horror, and fear. Everyone present was sharing the same exact thought. That boy is her son. Calming down slightly and taking a few deep breaths, Tsunade continued, however, because Naruto is here, I won't do anything. She set down the man who had been dangling by his collar, except this. With incredible speed, Tsunade turned and hit the man in the face with a chakra-enhanced punch, sending him flipping over and over, crashing through a few buildings. Turning and straightening out her clothes, she took Naruto's hand in hers. Let's go, Naruto. We need to talk to Sarutobi-sensei about moving your stuff, and now I need to talk to him about the poor treatment you've been receiving. I'll let him decide what to do with these poor excuses for human beings. Pulling Naruto behind her, Tsunade sent some glares towards the few ninja who were in the crowd that she had caught glaring at Naruto. I can't believe this. I've got to talk to Sarutobi-sensei about how Naruto is being treated. Stopping for a second, Tsunade took a breath and looked over to Naruto, who was still shaking slightly from what just happened. Frowning, the older blonde kneeled down and tried to soothe the younger blonde. Hey, are you okay, Naruto? I'm sorry if I scared you at all, and I'm sorry that you've been treated this way for so long. But don't worry, once I've officially become Hokage, I'll make sure that everyone knows the difference between you and what you contain. Smiling at the younger blonde, she brought him into a tight hug, trying to stop him from shaking, believing that it was out of fear. That was awesome. Naruto pushed back from Tsunade, but was still within arm's length. Ka-san, the way that you punched that guy and made him fly through all those buildings was so cool. Can you teach me how to do that? Seeing the excited expression on the boy's face, Tsunade couldn't help but sweat drop. Sure, Naruto, so you're okay. That didn't scare you or anything. No, I'm fine. I mean, sure, that scared me a little, but once I heard what you said, it helped me to stay brave. By the way, thank you for what you said and did, Ka-san. That means a lot to me. Naruto hugged her tight, resting his head on her shoulder. You're welcome, Naruto. Tsunade turned her head and kissed the side of his head, then hugged him back and rubbed his back. Standing up, she had a big smile on her face, and had Shizune been there, she would have said that it was the happiest she had ever seen Tsunade in a long time. Now, how about we finally go see Sarutobi-sensei? Yeah, let's go. Naruto started running ahead, leaving Tsunade jogging behind him, laughing the entire way. Having finally gotten to the Hokage mansion, Tsunade was surprised to see that much of the office was barren now, aside from the desk and the pictures on the wall of each of the individual Hokage. Standing at the desk was Sarutobi, who had just finished clearing out the contents of the desk into a small cardboard box. Hey sensei, why is the office empty? I thought my inauguration wasn't for a few days. The older blonde questioned. You're right, it was. The plan was changed though. I'm so tired of dealing with all this crap at my age, and so I decided to move it to tomorrow. And by the way, while you officially become Hokage tomorrow, I'll let you take advantage of the privileges available with the position, such as control over the Anbu. The old man responded. Tsunade was surprised to say the least. I mean, sure, she knew that the position of Hokage was no joke and was extremely stressful, but she had no idea that her sensei hated it that much. Oh, well, thank you, sensei. I was actually coming over here to ask you to have the Anbu help me and Naruto with something, but because you're letting me use the privileges early, I can fix it on my own. Having heard themselves being mentioned, two Anbu appeared kneeling in front of Tsunade, one wearing a boar mask and the other a hawk mask. You need assistance with something, Tsunade-sama. Tsunade was surprised at how quickly they had responded. Yes. I need you and a few other Anbu to help move Naruto's few belongings from his apartment to the Senju compound. Also, I need 1 or 2 Jonin to go into the village shopping district and check over the man that I punched and flew through a few buildings earlier today. Everyone except for the 2 blonde sweat dropped at this. If he is dead, then take him to the morgue. If he isn't, then take him to prison. The third perked up at this. What for Tsunade? Did this man commit some sort of crime? Tsunade gave her sensei an extremely serious look and nodded. The god of shinobi proceeded to ask, what did he do? He did 2 things. 1, he talked about how Naruto holds the Kyuubi, and 2, he said that no one would mind if I killed Naruto right then and there. While the second part may not have been against the law, it was still enough to piss me off. Sarutobi was shocked at this. He knew people didn't like Naruto, but he never thought things had been this severe. He then adopted a look of sadness at thinking about how little he was present in Naruto's life. He then realized something and decided to voice his thoughts. Wait, if the man spoke of the fox, then he is now condemned to die. So why do you want him in prison if he is alive? The slug princess smirked evilly at this. Simply because if he is alive, then there most likely isn't a single bone in his body not shattered, and he doesn't deserve to get out of that pain. Sarutobi adopted a scared look at what Tsunade had said. As you wish, Tsunade-sama. And with that, the two Anbu disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Tsunade smiled and then turned to her old sensei. Oh, and Sarutobi-sensei, would you happen to know where Jiraiya is right now? Because I have a few things that I need to speak with him about. The old man was simply confused at this request. In fact, he was confused about almost everything that had happened since Tsunade had shown up in his office. Deciding to voice his questions once Naruto wasn't present, he answered her. Yeah, I believe he was somewhere near the border of the Land of Fire, investigating a rumor about Orochimaru being in the area. I'll stop by the communication tower and have them send a messenger hawk telling him to return to the village. Thanks, sensei. That was all that I needed to do. Now if you'll excuse me, I promised Naruto that I would start training him to be a ninja today. Tsunade was about to leave when Sarutobi spoke up. Actually, Tsunade, there is something I wish to talk with you about. Alone. So Naruto, could you go wait outside for a few minutes? Sarutobi turned and finally acknowledged the younger blonde, who up until now had just been standing next to Tsunade, simply listening to everything going on. Sure. No problem, Gigi. But please hurry. I really wanna get started on my training. Naruto flashed his trademark foxy grin and then walked out of the office, closing the door behind him. Placing a silencer seal on the door so no one could hear what they were discussing, he turned to his student and finally voiced the questions that had been bothering him for a few minutes. Tsunade, what's going on? Looking as confused as her sensei felt, Tsunade responded. What are you talking about, sensei? Is something wrong? Sarutobi was surprised at her, to say the least. What I'm talking about is how you've been acting. First off, you actually came back to the village after who knows how many years, and completely out of the blue, I might add. You come into my office and tell me that you're actually accepting my request to become the next Hokage. You say that you need to talk with Jiraiya about something, and it's obviously serious considering that you're pulling away from a lead about Orochimaru. And finally, the biggest thing is that, out of nowhere, you tell me that you want to adopt Naruto. What happened that caused you to do all this? Tsunade's confused look dropped immediately, and was replaced by a look of complete seriousness. I wish I could tell you, sensei, but even if I did, there's no way you would believe me. The look he gave her was one that challenged what she just said. Try me. Tsunade frowned and sighed, then finally gave up and decided to tell him everything. Needless to say, by the time that she finished, the old man's jaw had dropped to the floor many times over. If it weren't for the serious look in her eyes, as well as the fact that her story explained her actions over the past few days, Sarutobi would have thought that she had made the whole thing up and was simply bluffing everything to get around telling him the real reason. Adopting a more contemplative appearance, Hiruzen thought about the whole situation for a few minutes, until finally speaking. Alright, I believe you. But Tsunade, you must understand that this is crucial information, and as of now, I'm making this an SSS rank secret, and no one who you can't trust to keep quiet about this is not allowed to know. That includes Naruto too, at least until he is a Chunin. Tsunade nodded to her old sensei, not being surprised by what he said. I understand that, sensei. The only other person I planned on telling was Jiraiya once he was back in the village and we had a moment to talk. Oh, by the way, speaking of SSS rank secrets, I thought I'd let you know that when I take him to start his training, I plan on telling him about the fox. Hiruzen was shocked at this, and was about to interject before Tsunade silenced him by putting a hand up, telling him that she was going to continue what she was saying. He needs and deserves to know sensei. I can tell that the smile that he wears is a mask, and I want him to know why everyone in the village looks at him like he's a plague. The old man thought about this for a moment, then simply nodded. All right, Tsunade. If you believe that he should know, then I'll trust your judgment. That was all. You can go now if there's nothing else you want to talk about. Thanks, sensei. I'll be sure to talk to you later once Jiraiya shows up. Later. Waving, Tsunade turned around and walked out of the office. Tsunade stopped in front of the little blonde boy waiting on a bench outside the building. Ready to go, Naruto. Seeing the smile on the boy's face while he nodded, she could tell how eager he was. All right, then let's go. Placing a hand on his shoulder, Tsunade shunshined over to the nearest field, which happened to be Training Field 7. Turning towards the younger blonde, she adopted a serious face. Okay, Naruto, I want you to show me how good you are at the basics. Let's start with a henge transformation. Nodding, Naruto did the hand seals and then he was surrounded by smoke. When the smoke cleared, at first glance, Tsunade had thought the boy had simply transformed into the third Hokage. Upon closer inspection, she could see that everything about the transformation was messed up. Basically how it looked in the first episode of Naruto during his Genin exam. Tsunade sighed and bit her thumbnail, a habit she had yet to rid herself of. She had hoped that the boy would have better chakra control than that. And she knew for a fact that he couldn't perform a simple Bunshin Jutsu, clone jutsu, even if his life depended on it. Looking back at the boy, she noticed he was still in his henge. Okay, Naruto, you can release the jutsu. Thinking for a moment, Tsunade posed a question to Naruto. Naruto, how good are you at the kawarimi substitution? Smiling sheepishly and scratching the back of his head, he answered her. Actually, that's the only one of the 3 basics that I can perform correctly. I don't know why, but I've just never been able to perform the other 2. Smirking, Tsunade couldn't help but think to herself, that's because you have such massive chakra reserves, along with the fox's chakra, which is screwing you up even more. Well, then I want you to watch closely, Naruto. I'm going to teach you a technique that you can use as a replacement for the Bunshin Jutsu. It's called the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu. Going through the hand seals, she ended with her hands in a cross formation, and then a small pillar of smoke appeared right next to her. Once the smoke cleared, Naruto could see an exact replica of Tsunade standing there. Ka-san, what makes this jutsu any different than the Bunshin? Tsunade could only giggle at the look of confusion on Naruto's face. Well, for one thing, you don't need as great of chakra control to do this jutsu, and second, clones made with this technique are solid, not just images. Now, I'll show you the hand seals again, and be sure to watch carefully, because I want you to learn them quickly. Going through them again, she smiled at how much attention Naruto was paying to the lesson. After seeing her go through them again and then going through them a few times himself to make sure he had it down pat, he got the okay from Tsunade to start funneling some chakra into the technique, and then said the technique. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. After being temporarily blinded by a massive cloud of smoke that appeared after that, Tsunade could not believe what she was seeing after it dissipated. Now covering the field was a mob of Narutos. If Tsunade had to guess, she'd estimate that there were about 100 clones. Tsunade was stunned to say the least. She knows the boy has a lot of chakra, along with the fox's chakra, but to be able to produce this many clones without even being a genin is ridiculous. Stealing herself, Tsunade smirked at the original, who had, luckily for her, been standing by her side the entire time. Wow, Naruto. I'm impressed. There are very few people who have ever been able to make this many clones, and none of them were able to do it at your age and rank. Flashing that foxy smile that he's known for, Tsunade decided to tell him more about the jutsu. Naruto, there's something else you should know about this jutsu. It's mostly used for recon, and that's because when a clone dispels, any and all information that it gathered since being created travels back to the original. Since most people can only create a few clones, it's only ever been used for reconnaissance purposes. But since you're able to make this many clones, it's possible for you to be able to use it for training purposes. Naruto was amazed at what the older blonde had told him. If that were true, then Naruto couldn't even begin to imagine how quickly he would be able to learn something. Now Naruto, let's begin your training. You should already know the basics of chakra, so I want you to send all your clones into the forest. They each need to find their own extremely tall tree. Once they have, I want them to begin with a tree walking exercise. As they attempt to walk up the tree, I want the first few clones that reach a quarter of the way up to dispel. After that, the first few clones to reach halfway up the tree, and then the first few clones to reach 3/4 of the way up. If all goes according to plan, most of your clones should be able to reach the tops of their trees by the end of the day. Naruto's awe-struck face turned to a smile of confidence, and after all the clones left for the forest to begin their task, Naruto and Tsunade were the only ones left. Naruto couldn't help but be curious as to why Tsunade had all the clones go, but not him. He decided to voice his thoughts. Ka-san, why did you send all my clones to start tree walking but not me? Tsunade smiled at the boy's question. Well, quite simply, I wanted to have all your clones working on your chakra control, which will transfer back to you, but I kept you behind because I'm gonna start your physical training, which is something that can't be transferred from your clones. Adopting a serious face, Tsunade kneeled down before Naruto and looked him dead in the eye. Naruto, there's something I have to tell you. Naruto was confused about what she was going to say, but he could tell that it was going to be important. I know that you've noticed all the glares people give you, and that you hear all the things they say. Seeing him nod, she went on. Well, there's a reason for that. Naruto, you are what's known as a Jinchuriki, and sealed inside you is the demon that attacked the village 11 years ago on the day of your birth. That demon is the Kyuubi, the nine-tailed demon fox. Naruto was shocked by this news. Slowly, things started to connect in his head. Seeing that the boy was on the verge of collapsing, Tsunade wrapped Naruto in her arms, and she had to stop herself from crying when she felt him wrap his arms around her and clench onto her shirt tightly. Once she felt he had calmed down a little, she held him by his shoulders at arm's length and looked him dead in the eye. Naruto, listen to me. No matter what you've heard people say, you are not the fox. Those idiots on the street and on the council can't tell the difference between the jailer and his tenant. Do you understand, Naruto? Seeing the look of understanding on his face, she stood up and decided to begin his individual training. Alright Naruto, since you're ready, I want you to start with 50 laps around the training field. Naruto's jaw dropped at her request. Start running. Scared of what might happen to him if he didn't obey, Naruto started running at his top speed. He was beginning to wonder if being trained by Tsunade of the legendary Sannin was going to end up being a good thing or not. Yeah, I know, it's been a while. Over a decade, in fact. When I first started this story, I was just a teenager who loved Naruto and wanted to explore the What if, of Tsunade going back in time to raise Naruto right? And heck, it wasn't even my idea first. Shout out to Blue Baby Blanket for the wild inspiration. Since then, life has changed a lot. New state, new responsibilities, some taxes, some trauma. You know, the boss fights of adulthood. But this story, it never left me. It whispered to me in the middle of the night like some feral chakra beast demanding closure. So here we are. Naruto is 12. It's the morning of the Genin exams. And Double or Nothing is back. Gods help us all. The sun had only just begun to rise over the Hidden Leaf village, spilling golden light over tiled rooftops and tree-lined streets. Birds sang. The village was calm, but inside the Senju compound, calm was not on the morning schedule. Naruto. Tsunade's voice rang through the hall with all the grace of a summoned bear. If you're not dressed and out the door in 5 minutes, I swear I will throw you out in your pajamas. I'm up, came the rapid-fire reply. Naruto Uzumaki, age 12, loud, blonde, and already carrying more chakra than most elite Jonin, tumbled out of his room, hair still damp from his rushed shower, a piece of toast hanging from his mouth. The emerald necklace at his neck bounced with every step, always visible, always grounding. Gone was the garish, eye-watering orange jumpsuit. In its place, Naruto now wore a fitted black zip-up vest lined in deep crimson, its collar high and marked with a stylized swirl on the back, the Uzumaki clan symbol, embroidered by hand. His pants were charcoal gray with reinforced stitching at the knees and thighs, built for movement, dusted faintly with chalk from yesterday's tree-walking drills. A crimson sash looped around his waist where ninja tools were neatly fastened in a black holster, and his sandals were new, clean, and well-worn at the soles from hours of practice. He looked less like a prankster and more like a shinobi. Still Naruto, but sharper. Ready. He rounded the corner into the kitchen where Tsunade waited, arms crossed, steaming mug in hand. She didn't smile, but her eyes softened as they landed on him. You ready? She asked. Naruto swallowed his toast and nodded. Yeah, I'm gonna crush it. She sipped her tea. Good. Just remember, passing the exam doesn't make you a shinobi. What you do after does. Naruto nodded again, this time more solemnly. Outside, the village buzzed with life as Naruto made his way to the academy, a mix of nerves and excitement curling in his gut. 8 years of training. 8 years of hard work under Tsunade's watchful eye. He wasn't just ready. He was built for this. The exam itself was almost underwhelming. Basic henge. Done. Kawarimi. Second nature. Bunshin. Still a pain, but Tsunade had ensured he never had to fake his way through it. He used Kage Bunshin, and while Iruka raised an eyebrow, no one argued with results. When his name was called and the forehead protector was tied around his head, Naruto stared into the mirror on the wall of the classroom. I did it, Ka-san, he whispered. Later that morning, the students gathered in their usual classroom. Old rivalries and friendly chatter filled the air. Naruto sat near the window, grinning, headband proudly displayed. Iruka entered with a clipboard and cleared his throat. The room settled instantly. All right, here are your teams. Listen closely. Iruka cleared his throat, scanning the clipboard. All right, here are your teams. Murmurs rippled through the room. A few students leaned forward in anticipation. Others sank lower into their seats, bracing for disappointment. Team 10. Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akamichi, and Sakura Haruno. Shikamaru groaned audibly. How troublesome. Choji smiled and reached for another chip. Sakura blinked in surprise, visibly disappointed. Her eyes darted toward Sasuke across the room. Her shoulders slumped. Not on his team, she mumbled, just loud enough for a few nearby classmates to hear. Still, when she looked over at Shikamaru and Choji, both of whom gave small, encouraging nods, she sighed and nodded back. All right. Let's do our best. Team 7. Sasuke Uchiha, Ino Yamanaka, and Shino Aburame. Ino's jaw dropped. Wait, what? I'm on Sasuke's team, she beamed, clutching her hands to her chest. This is the best day ever. Then she glanced to her side. Her smile faltered. Wait, Shino. Bug boy. Seriously. Shino, ever unbothered, simply adjusted his sunglasses. My insects have better hearing than you might think, Yamanaka. Ino recoiled slightly. Gross. But okay, fine. I'll make it work. Shino adjusted his glasses. Sasuke didn't react. Iruka raised his voice before another outburst could begin. Team 8. Naruto Uzumaki, Kiba Inuzuka, and Hinata Hyuga. The room went quiet. Naruto blinked. Wait, really? Me and Hinata and Kiba. Hinata looked like she might slide out of her chair from blushing too hard. Kiba barked a short laugh. Hey, this is gonna be fun. Naruto's grin widened. Hey, this might actually work out. Iruka smiled faintly. You'll be under Kurenai Yuhi. She'll meet you after lunch. You're dismissed until then. As the students began to rise and gather their things, chatter broke out all over again. Sakura shot one last wistful glance toward Sasuke, who hadn't even looked her way. Ino leaned dramatically against her desk, clearly weighing the pros and cons of being near her crush and, unfortunately, near a colony of bugs. Naruto remained seated for a beat longer, letting the news settle in. He turned his head to glance at Hinata, who quickly looked away, her face glowing red. Then he looked at Kiba, who had slung his jacket over his shoulder and was already heading toward the door with his ninkin, Akamaru, peeking out from inside. Kiba paused and glanced back. Coming, Naruto. Naruto stood up and stretched. Yeah, let's see what we're working with. He didn't say it aloud, but the thought echoed clearly in his mind. We're really doing this. Kiba suggested the barbecue place. Naruto didn't argue. Hinata, as always, quietly agreed. They reached the restaurant just ahead of the lunch rush. Kiba shoved the door open with a swagger, Akamaru padding in beside him. Corner booth's best, he said over his shoulder, already leading the way. Naruto followed, glancing around with mild curiosity, while Hinata hesitated just a second longer before quietly trailing behind them. Her eyes flicked nervously between the two boys. Kiba flopped into one side of the booth, stretching out with Akamaru jumping up beside him. Naruto slid in across, and Hinata tucked herself beside Naruto, folding her hands in her lap. When the waiter came, Naruto ordered a mountain of grilled meat, Kiba doubled it, and Hinata softly asked for a small rice bowl with steamed vegetables. For a moment, no one said much. The plates clinked down. Sizzling meats hit the grill in the center of the table. The smell made Naruto's stomach growl loud enough that even Hinata stifled a giggle. So, Naruto said, tearing into a skewer, we're a team now. Looks like it, Kiba replied, chewing on a beef strip. Hope you can keep up, Blondie. Naruto snorted. Keep up. I've been doing laps around this village since you were still figuring out which end of the kunai to hold. Kiba raised an eyebrow but grinned. Confident. Huh, I like that. Hinata smiled faintly, watching the two boys banter with a kind of awe. This wasn't like the cold formality of the academy. It was real, human, teamwork, maybe. I'm glad, it's you two, she said quietly. Naruto blinked, looking over at her. I mean, I think we'll work well together, Hinata clarified, her voice a bit stronger. She met Naruto's eyes for a moment, cheeks pink. Naruto beamed. Yeah, I think so too. Kiba leaned back with a stretch. As long as we don't get stuck pulling weeds for the next 3 months, I'll call it a win. The three of them laughed. The tension broke. It wasn't a perfect team yet. But the threads were starting to weave together. Kurenai Yuhi arrived at training field 13 with her usual poise and calm. Her long black hair shifted slightly in the breeze, and her crimson eyes swept over her new students with quiet evaluation. She greeted each of them with a slight nod, her expression unreadable. Naruto straightened his posture, trying to appear serious. Hinata bowed politely, hands clasped in front of her. Kiba simply grinned, arms folded behind his head. So, you're the ones I'm working with, Kurenai said evenly. Naruto Uzumaki, Kiba Inuzuka, and Hinata Hyuga. You've made it through the academy. But that doesn't mean you're ready to be shinobi. Naruto blinked. Huh, we just passed the exams, didn't we? Kiba raised an eyebrow. What's that supposed to mean? It means, she said, folding her arms, that I'm going to test you. Teamwork, resolve, awareness. You'll either impress me, or I'll recommend you return to the academy. She stepped forward and held up 2 fingers. A genjutsu fell across the clearing. The world shimmered. Suddenly, the trees were gone. The sky twisted. The team found themselves isolated, each alone, standing within a silent field of tall mirrors. Their reflections stared back, and then began to change. Hinata's mirror self sneered, eyes cold and perfect. You'll always be weak. An embarrassment. A failure in your clan's eyes. Kiba's showed Akamaru lying still. You let me get hurt. Again. Some leader you are. Naruto's reflection turned its back. She raised you, but you'll never live up to her. You'll always be the kid who needed saving. Each of them stood paralyzed. The voices didn't shout, they whispered. Cold, patient, relentless. The kind that knew exactly where the cracks already were. Naruto's breath came faster. He clenched his fists. No. No, this is wrong, this isn't real. He dropped into a crouch, gathering his thoughts, drawing from every lecture Tsunade had hammered into his brain. Focus. Feel. Don't just look. See. A deep breath. He closed his eyes. Hinata. Kiba. It's a genjutsu. You have to fight it. At first, only silence answered him. Then, I hear you. Hinata's voice trembled, barely a thread of sound, but it was there. A heartbeat later. Damn thing's messing with my head, Naruto. That you? Kiba's voice barked. Naruto grinned. Together. Focus. Break it. The mirrors cracked. Hinata focused her chakra. Her Byakugan flared, and with it, the illusions fractured around her. Kiba howled as chakra surged into his limbs, Akamaru growling beside him. With a final surge, Naruto slammed his fist into his reflection. Shatter. The clearing returned. Kurenai stood, arms crossed, calm as ever. She gave a small, satisfied nod. You pass. The next morning, Team 8 met at the same training field, this time under a gentler sun and without illusions warping the world around them. Kurenai stood at the edge of the clearing, arms folded. Yesterday was about your minds. Today is about your instincts. She stepped forward, her gaze piercing. From now on, our mornings will be spent training in your foundational strengths, and sharpening your weaknesses. She turned to each of them, speaking plainly. Hinata, you've mastered the basics of the gentle fist, but your stance leaves too much room for doubt. I'll be working with you on your confidence and movement in live combat. We'll incorporate evasive feints and silent takedown techniques. I'll also begin teaching you a genjutsu disruption method using breathing and pulse control. Hinata blinked in surprise, then nodded. Yes, sensei. Kiba, you and Akamaru are fierce together, but reckless. We'll be refining your chakra control, especially for long-distance coordination. I'm going to teach you the piercing fang technique, but you won't be allowed to use it until you've mastered redirection mid-spin. That means no crashing into trees this time. Kiba grimaced. One time. That happened one time. In Naruto. She paused, eyes sharp. Your power is formidable, but you rely on instinct too much. We'll be drilling target focus, clone coordination, and delayed activation traps. I'm going to teach you a low-level genjutsu. Not because I expect you to become a genjutsu user, but so you understand how to spot one from the outside. Naruto's jaw dropped. Wait. You can teach genjutsu? Kurenai raised an eyebrow. I'm the Leaf's foremost genjutsu specialist. If anyone can make you learn the basics, it's me. Naruto grinned. Then bring it on. Nothing could have prepared Naruto for the horrors of D-rank missions. First D-rank mission. Pet retrieval. Why? So many cats. Naruto groaned, cradling a scratched-up furball in his arms. This one's named Tiger, the old lady said sweetly. He bites when he's happy. Tiger bit him. Naruto shrieked. Kiba laughed so hard he fell off the roof. Third D-rank mission. Garden maintenance. Are these even weeds? Naruto asked. They look like flowers, Hinata mumbled, tilting her head. Don't care. I'm pulling everything, Kiba declared. 5 minutes later, they were scolded by a 6-year-old with a clipboard and more authority than any of them. 6th D-rank mission. Livestock rounding. Hinata tried to coax a goat with cabbage. It headbutted her into a haystack. Kiba argued with a llama. He lost. Naruto stepped in poop. 13th D-rank mission. Childcare watch duty. The toddler flung a pudding cup like a shuriken. It hit Naruto in the eye. Why is it always me? Because you said, how bad could it be? Kiba replied. The child tried to climb the ceiling. 19th D-rank mission. Public calligraphy signwork. Naruto attempted to shadow clone the job. 10 minutes later, there were 30 versions of him arguing about brushstroke technique. Kurenai made them do it manually. 27th D-rank mission. Leaf removal. They raked for 3 hours. A gust of wind undid all of it in seconds. Naruto collapsed face first into the leaves. I hate nature. They groaned. They griped. But slowly, they began to laugh about it. Team 8 was becoming a team. Team 8, the Chunin at the mission desk called, waving them forward. Report to the Hokage's office. You've been assigned a C-rank mission. Naruto blinked. Wait, a real mission? Kiba whooped. Finally. No more weeding. Hinata smiled, her fingers twisting in her sleeves, nervous but curious. They climbed the stairs to the Hokage's tower, unaware that this moment would change everything. Tsunade sat behind the desk, arms crossed, reading the team's file. The Wave mission. Escort a bridge builder to Nami no Kuni. No known threats. But her instincts flared. That name. Tazuna. She remembered, in the old timeline, Kakashi's team had taken that mission. Zabuza. Haku. Naruto's first brush with real mortality. And Sasuke's first taste of bitter comparison, one he never truly let go. But this wasn't the team. Naruto had changed. So had she. Maybe that meant this mission could change too. The door creaked open. Enter, she said. Team 8 filed in. Kurenai followed, quiet and steady. Tsunade gave them a long look. Naruto stood proud. Kiba bounced on his toes. Hinata, nervous, but determined. You've got a client waiting, she said. A scruffy older man stepped forward, walking stick in hand and sake on his breath. This is Tazuna. He's a bridge builder from the land of waves. Tazuna looked the kids up and down. These are my guards. Hope you don't wet yourselves when a bandit sneezes. Kiba growled. Naruto stepped forward. We can handle it. Tsunade saw it. That flicker in Naruto's eye. That need to prove something. Don't chase the legacy, she thought. Build your own. Kurenai nodded. We leave at dawn. Pack lightly. As they left the room, Tsunade leaned back, the weight of time pressing behind her eyes. All right, she thought. Let's see what changes next. The road stretched quiet under the midday sun, flanked by tall grass and thin trees that rustled faintly with wind. Team 8 walked in a loose formation, Naruto trailing near the middle, occasionally flipping a kunai between his fingers. Kiba and Akamaru were up front, ears perked, while Hinata moved silently on the opposite flank. Kurenai walked just ahead, ever watchful, next to the mission's client, the ever-muttering, flask-toting bridge builder, Tazuna. Naruto was the first to break the silence. "This still doesn't feel like a real mission," he said, tossing the kunai into the air and catching it behind his back with casual flair. "I mean, come on, we're guarding a guy building a bridge. Where's the excitement?" "You want excitement," Kiba grumbled. "Try not screwing up the formation every 5 steps." Naruto didn't look back at him. "I'm just saying, if this stays boring, I'm gonna need to start naming squirrels to pass the time." Hinata laughed softly under her breath. Naruto-kun." Kiba rolled his eyes. "You're hopeless." But Naruto wasn't really paying attention anymore. His steps slowed. His brow furrowed. They'd passed that small incline back there. It was sunny. Warm. No recent rain. But just ahead on the dirt path, something caught his eye. A puddle. Small. Still. Deep enough to reflect light. It sat right in the middle of the trail. No way that should be there. He narrowed his eyes. Too hot. No shadows big enough. And no humidity. That thing's just sitting there like it's waiting. His kunai flipped once more, then disappeared into his sleeve. "Kurenai-sensei," he said suddenly, voice quieter than usual. She glanced back immediately. That tone wasn't Naruto's usual joking bravado, it was calm. Serious. He pointed. "That puddle's wrong." Kiba opened his mouth to object, then blinked. "Wait. He's right. That hasn't evaporated. FWSSH. The puddle exploded in a burst of water and flying steel. 2 masked figures shot up from below, chains already snapping outward like whips. "Get back!" Kurenai barked, already leaping backward. One chain whipped toward Tazuna's throat. "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu!" Naruto shouted, 2 clones bursting into existence midair. One slammed into the chain, taking the brunt of the blow as the other clone yanked Tazuna backward. Kiba and Akamaru launched themselves forward, fangs bared. "Gatsuga!" Akamaru spun with Kiba in a vicious corkscrew, forcing one of the brothers into defense. The other lashed his claws toward Hinata. She froze. Just for a second. "Move!" Byakugan. Her fingers locked into the seal, chakra flaring to her eyes. Her vision sharpened instantly, every muscle in the enemy's arm lit up in detail. "Don't panic. Don't freeze. You can do this." She ducked low, twisting her hips, and struck the attacker's wrist with 2 fast Juken strikes. The blow wasn't perfect, but it was clean, disrupting his chakra flow just enough to stagger him. And for the first time, Hinata didn't back away after a hit. She held her ground. Naruto didn't stop. He leapt forward with the real him this time, 3 more clones popping beside him, forming a moving screen. "Now!" he shouted. Kiba rotated to the left. Hinata moved to the right. Naruto's middle clone swept low. And Naruto himself flipped through the air, landing heel first onto the enemy's collarbone with a heavy crack. The first demon brother crumpled. The second tried to retreat, only to find Kurenai standing behind him. Her voice was cold. "Megan. Jubaku Satsu." He blinked, and suddenly, couldn't move. His arms locked. His breath caught. For a heartbeat, it was as though roots burst from the ground and wrapped around his limbs. And in that frozen moment, a kunai met his throat. Silence. Both brothers hit the dirt. Panting, Naruto stood with his last clone fading into smoke beside him. Tazuna blinked, his knees shaking. What was that? You almost got gutted, old man," Kiba muttered. Hinata lowered her hands, her eyes still glowing faintly. She was visibly shaking, but smiling. Naruto-kun, that was amazing. Naruto didn't respond. He was already kneeling near what used to be the puddle. He touched the dirt. Dry now. Normal. They weren't just waiting, he said. They were lying in that for hours. Days, maybe. That wasn't just an ambush. That was a hit. Kurenai walked over slowly, checking the bodies. Her face darkened. These aren't bandits, she said grimly. They're Nuke Nin. Chunin level at least, from Kurigakure. She flipped one of the headbands over with her kunai, the mist symbol scratched clean through. The Demon Brothers. Gozu and Maizu. I've read their bingo book profiles, they specialize in ambush kills. Silent takedowns. Naruto stood up slowly. So why are they after a bridge builder? Tazuna paled. Alright, Kurenai said, straightening. Tazuna. Talk. Now. Tazuna rubbed the back of his neck, eyes darting away from all of them. I may have left out a few details. Naruto crossed his arms. You think? Tazuna sighed and looked toward the trees. Look, it's not like I wanted to drag kids into this. But we didn't have a choice. Our country, the land of waves, were poor. Real poor. Ever since Gato's company showed up, things have gone downhill. He pretended to help us at first, then started controlling trade routes, taxing the ports, and cutting people off. No one can stand up to him. He owns the shipping companies and a private army of thugs in Nuke Nin. People are scared to even speak his name. He took a swig from his flask, then lowered it without drinking. I'm building this bridge to connect us back to the mainland. If it gets finished, it breaks Gato's grip. So, he's trying to kill me before that happens. There was a long pause. You submitted this as AC rank escort, Kurenai said flatly. Because it was all we could afford, he muttered. If I told the truth, no one would have come. Kurenai closed her eyes. Her jaw tightened. This mission is over. The genin froze. What? Naruto took a step forward. Why? We were hired under false pretenses, she said firmly. You three were assigned to a standard escort mission. What we just faced were trained assassins. That is not C rank. It's already approaching B, maybe A. I'm not risking your lives because of someone else's deception. But we handled it, Kiba protested. We beat them. You got lucky, she shot back. Luck isn't a strategy. And there's no guarantee the next enemy we face will make the same mistakes. Hinata lowered her gaze, her hands clenched. Tazuna said nothing. He looked ashamed. Naruto's voice was low this time. So what? We just walk away. Kurenai turned. Naruto. No. I get it. You're our sensei. You're supposed to protect us. But, he looked at Tazuna. Then the road ahead. If we leave now, what happens to them? What happens to everyone counting on that bridge? Kiba opened his mouth, then closed it. Naruto kept going. I mean, we're shinobi, right? Isn't this what we're supposed to do? Even when it's dangerous. He stepped forward, eyes steady. If we're never ready to take that risk, then what are we even training for? The words settled like dust. Kurenai stared at him for a long moment. The wind rustled leaves behind them. Finally, she exhaled. You don't make the call here, Naruto. I know, he said quietly. But I still believe it. She looked over all three of them, Hinata, silent but unmoving. Kiba, fidgeting but no longer arguing. Naruto, steady. Then she looked at Tazuna. You understand that if anything happens to them, that's on you. He nodded. Yeah, I do. Kurenai turned back to her team. Alright, we continue. But from here on, this is no longer a training assignment. You follow every order. No improvising. No outbursts. Yes, sensei, they replied in unison. Naruto gave the faintest grin. Good. We're not done yet. The path narrowed as they neared the river crossing. Trees thickened. The air felt colder. Then the mist began to roll in. First thin, then denser. Each breath turned damp. The sun disappeared. Kiba's nose twitched. This is wrong. Akamaru growled, ears back. Hinata activated her Byakugan, frowning. I can't see very far, there's movement. Fast. All around. Kurenai raised her hand, halting the group. Tight formation. Eyes open. Sound off every 10 seconds. Naruto stepped up beside Tazuna, kunai already in hand. Why's it getting hard to breathe? Kurenai's voice lowered. This isn't natural fog. It's jutsu. The answer came without warning. A massive cleaver spun from the trees, its wide blade cutting through the air like a guillotine. Down. Kurenai shouted. They dove. The sword slammed into a tree trunk, burying itself deep enough to split bark with a thunderous crack. And then, he was there. A dark figure stood atop the embedded blade, perfectly balanced, as if the weapon had always been part of the landscape. Tall, bare-chested, bandages wrapped the lower half of his face. His forehead protector kept a shock of short, spiked black hair swept upward, wild but deliberate. Cold eyes stared down at them, calculating and without mercy. He didn't speak. He didn't pose. He just looked at them, long and slow, like he was counting which one would die first. Kurenai's hand gripped a kunai tight enough to whiten her knuckles. That sword, she said under her breath. It can't be. The man raised a single hand sign. Kurigakur no jutsu. The mist snapped shut. Run. Kurenai barked. Get Tazuna to safety, now. But, that's an order. Kiba grabbed Tazuna. Come on. Akamaru barked, bolting alongside them. Hinata followed, though every glance backward was panicked. Naruto lingered for 1 second longer, then took off after them. They burst into a grove where the fog thinned slightly. Breathing hard, scanning behind them, nothing but mist. Kiba slammed his fist into a tree. Damn it, we shouldn't have left her. She told us to go. Hinata's voice shook. She'll be okay, right? Naruto said nothing for a moment. Then, no, she won't. They turned to look at him. She's strong, yeah, but that guy, that wasn't a normal enemy. You saw how he moved. Hinata's eyes were still active, but the range was limited. I can't see anything now. The mist is blocking it. It's like, he's gone. He's not gone, Naruto said grimly. He's just waiting for us to drop our guard. Kiba's jaw clenched. So what? You wanna go back and die? No, Naruto said. I want to go back and help. That's our sensei. She stayed behind for us. If we leave her, what does that make us? Silence. Then, you coming or not? Hinata stepped forward first. Why yes, I'm with you. Kiba looked at her, then at Naruto, then groaned. You're both insane. Let's do it. Naruto smiled, just slightly, and formed a hand seal. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 2 clones popped beside him in puffs of smoke. You two stay with Tazuna. Protect him. The clones nodded and took position on either side of the builder. Naruto turned back toward the mist. Let's move. They pushed back through the trees, slower this time. Watching. Listening. Then they heard it. Metal clashing. A kunai breaking. A roar. And then, a shout of pain. They broke through a final curtain of fog, and froze. Zabuza stood in the middle of the clearing, bleeding from the upper chest just beneath his collarbone. His massive blade was slung across one shoulder, his breaths ragged and wheezing through the bandages around his face. Kurenai was down on one knee, clutching her side. Her eyes locked with Naruto's, then widened slightly as if to shout, "Don't." Too late. Zabuza turned. You should have stayed gone, he rasped. But fine. You can all die together. He took one step forward. Naruto and Kiba moved to intercept. Then Zabuza stopped. Trembled. TCH. Can't feel my arm. He looked at the blood dripping from his elbow. Doesn't matter. I'll kill you with the other one. His body tensed. A killing aura poured off him like heat. I don't care what happens. I don't care if I die doing it. You're all going to D. FWIP. A flash of silver. A wet thump cut through the fog. Zabuza staggered, the long needles embedded cleanly in his neck. His eyes widened, then dulled. The massive sword slipped from his grasp and hit the ground with a heavy crash. He crumpled. Out of the mist, without a sound, a masked figure appeared. Slender. Silent. Their arrival was so sudden, it was as if they'd materialized from the air itself. The hunter nin caught Zabuza's falling body and laid it down with eerie precision. Thank you, the voice behind the mask said, soft but clear. You weakened him enough that I could finish the job. They stood, unreadable. Then, in a blur of movement, both they and Zabuza's body were gone. Not a whisper remained. What the hell just happened? Naruto muttered. Kurenai coughed and slowly pushed herself upright, favoring her ribs. That was a hunter nin, she said through gritted teeth. Kurigakure's cleanup squad. Their job is to kill missing nin before they can leak information. Hinata's eyes were wide. So, they weren't trying to help us. No, Kurenai said, shaking her head. They were just doing their job. The mist had begun to fade, but the weight in the air hadn't. They moved quickly. Kurenai could barely stand, her left side stiff with pain and her breathing shallow. Whatever internal damage she'd taken during the fight wasn't something they could ignore. Naruto knelt beside her, jaw tight, and helped her onto his back without argument. Kiba kept pace beside him, eyes sharp and Akamaru low to the ground, ears flicking with every shift in the trees. Hinata flanked Tazuna again, this time walking closer, protective rather than distant. There was no more banter, no joking, no wasted breath. Only the drive to move, to get clear, to get her somewhere safe. By the time they reached the outskirts of a modest clearing, Tazuna's small home came into view, a worn but well-kept structure built atop wooden pilings just past the edge of the tree line. Its windows glowed faintly with early lamplight. As the front door opened, a woman and a young boy stared out at them in shock. That's my daughter, Tsunami, and my grandson, Inari, Tazuna said quickly, rushing ahead of the team. We need a place for her to rest, now. Inari, get water. Tsunami, start boiling towels. Naruto barked the orders without thinking, shifting into the tone of someone used to emergency. Someone trained. Tazuna froze for a beat, surprised not by Naruto's words, but the authority behind them. Inside, Naruto laid Kurenai down gently on a futon. She grunted in pain as she settled in, but he was already rolling up her sleeve and inspecting the bruising along her ribs. Mom taught me to check for internal bleeds first, he muttered, mostly to himself. Look for swelling, discoloration, breathing irregularities. Hinata hovered nearby, wringing her hands. I can help. Naruto nodded without looking up. Hold this here. Keep the pressure steady. She did as asked, her palms trembling. Naruto dug into his pouch and pulled out a small scroll. With a flick of chakra, it popped open into a neat row of wrapped gauze, antiseptic, a collapsible canteen, and surgical gloves. He slipped the gloves on, hands steady now. All right, slow and careful. Just like she taught me. As he worked, Tsunami stood in the doorway watching, silent, awed. And Tazuna, for all his grumbling, said nothing. Kurenai coughed once and cracked a tired smile. Didn't know I had a medic nin in training on my team. Naruto glanced up with a half grin. You didn't. You've got a Senju apprentice. Big difference. She huffed a weak laugh. Noted. The house had long since gone still. Outside, the chirp of crickets crept softly through the walls, blending with the occasional creak of damp wood. A single lantern flickered beside the window, casting a slow amber glow across the room. Most of the others had already turned in. Naruto had been the last to settle down after tending to her injuries. Kurenai sat propped against the wall in quiet contemplation, a thin blanket wrapped loosely around her shoulders. Her breathing was shallow but steady. The worst of the pain had dulled under Naruto's improvised medical ninjutsu. Crude, maybe, but precise in its execution. Tsunade's work, clearly. It wasn't just the technique, though. It was the calm. He hadn't panicked. Not even once. There'd been no wide-eyed hesitation, no shaking hands. Just controlled focus and a quiet command of the moment. Kurenai couldn't help but feel impressed. She closed her eyes for a breath, letting that thought settle. And that's when the memory returned. The mist had closed in like of ice. Heavy. Suffocating. She remembered how its smothered sound, warped distance, made even her senses feel dulled. Her illusions barely slowed him. She wondered if he even noticed them. Her chakra was running dry. She had no backup. Her lungs burned from the cold. Sorry, lady, this is where you die, came the growl from the mist. Then I'll carve through your little students next. And then, she saw it. The sword, swinging toward her like a drawn crescent of death. Her body moved on instinct. Kunai raised. Not to kill, to deflect. A desperate bid for time. It failed. She braced for the end. Clang. The massive blade was knocked off course, sparks flying as steel met steel. A second figure stood between them. Out of the mist, like a phantom, a shinobi clad in Anbu black had materialized, standard issue flak armor, the distinctive sleeveless cut revealing a spiral tattoo along one arm. His porcelain mask was shaped like a stylized raven, painted in sharp blacks and smoky gray, thin red slashes carved around its eyes. Kurenai hadn't even seen him move. There was no hesitation, no theatrics. The masked shinobi attacked. He stepped in with a burst of speed, pushing Zabuza back with a flurry of strikes, each one precise, mechanical, perfectly angled to pressure rather than kill. A kunai carved a clean line across Zabuza's chest, just below the collarbone. Then the shinobi's palm slammed directly into the joint of Zabuza's sword arm, precise and brutal. The blow cracked through muscle and nerve with pinpoint force, and Zabuza's arm faltered. He recovered fast, but the damage was done. His grip had already begun to weaken. The intruder pivoted low, ducked beneath a retaliatory swing, and drove a boot into Zabuza's ribs, sending him staggering and bleeding. Zabuza recovered fast. Too fast for most, but the masked shinobi didn't let up. He was relentless. Blow after blow landed with terrifying control, not wasting motion, not even needing to breathe hard. Zabuza's grin faltered. His attacks became heavier, more ragged, less about technique, more about survival. And still, the masked figure pressed forward. Only once he had driven Zabuza several meters away did he retreat half a step, positioning himself in front of Kurenai again like a silent wall. Kurenai, dazed but conscious, blinked up at him. Who are you? The masked shinobi didn't glance back. His voice was quiet, cold. Designation. Raven. Orders are clear. Protect the boy. A beat. He turned slightly, eyes behind the mask shifting toward the trees. Your team is nearly back. And with that, he vanished. No chakra flare. No parting motion. Just gone, like he'd never been there at all. Zabuza stood motionless in the mist, blood dripping from a shallow cut on his arm. His knuckles clenched, his breath ragged, and behind the trees, footsteps were fast approaching. Back in the present, Kurenai's gaze drifted toward the dark ceiling. Protect the boy. She knew about the Kyuubi. All Jonin did. And between that and being the adopted son of a current cage, She even understood the necessity of Anbu watching over him in the field. But something about that Raven operative, his timing, his words, scraped at the back of her mind. Tsunade had sent them out expecting AC rank. Escort the bridge builder, watch the genin gain some field experience, come home. So why the shadow play? Why the silence? Did she know this mission would escalate? The thought lingered, unsettling. Kurenai exhaled slowly, eyes still fixed on the ceiling. I trust you, Tsunade.